Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're putting a lens on something incredibly profound, super intricate, and honestly, really often misunderstood: the fragile human mind. I want us to just set aside the cultural noise, right? All those casual jokes we hear every day. Instead, let's approach this topic with some serious, empathetic focus. We're going to look closely at the actual reality of mental disorders, bypassing all that stigma to understand the literal mechanics of these unseen daily battles.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Look at this quote. Your brain is physically struggling to generate the chemicals that make living possible. This perfectly hits the nail on the head for what we're doing today. We are shifting entirely away from those societal myths, the ones that treat mental illness like a character flaw or just some simple lack of willpower. No way. Instead, we're grounding ourselves in the visceral neurological reality. This is biology, plain and simple. It's about a physical organ, your brain, literally struggling to do its job.
So that brings us to Section 1, Unseen Battles of the Mind. Let's get into it. We so frequently misunderstand depression. It is absolutely crucial to understand that it is not simply a bad mood. It's a physical malfunction where critical systems like your serotonin and dopamine literally break down. You or someone you know might have experienced this, and man, it's so important to recognize the difference here. See, sadness has a reason, a story, a specific cause, and most importantly, it's temporary. Depression, on the other hand, it just exists. It feels incredibly empty and heavy. It's a chemical malfunction. That cultural myth of telling someone to, just think positive or go for a walk, that isn't just unhelpful, it's deeply harmful. It completely ignores the agonizing reality that for someone with severe depression, just getting out of bed can literally feel like climbing Mount Everest.
Moving on to Section 2, Broken Alarms, specifically anxiety disorders.
So what exactly happens when the brain's internal protective systems just misfire, trapping a person in this state of constant, exhausting dread? Well, enter the amygdala. This is your brain's fear center. When this little guy sounds a false alarm, it triggers a full-blown survival response, basically flooding the body with stress hormones even when there is absolutely zero danger around. So the crucial takeaway here is that telling someone with generalized anxiety disorder to just calm down or stop overthinking, it's literally as useless as telling someone with a broken leg to just walk normally. Their alarm system is fundamentally broken.
And this broken alarm system, it can quickly escalate into a seriously vicious panic feedback loop. Imagine this: a panic attack hits out of nowhere. Your heart pounds so hard you have this absolutely genuine, terrifying fear of dying. And because of that terror, the physical symptoms actually get worse. But the ultimate trap here isn't just the attack itself. It's that it creates a paralyzing fear of the next attack. The sufferer basically becomes terrified of their own nervous system, shrinking their entire world down just to avoid another terrifying episode.
Now, let's take a look at social anxiety. And let me be clear, this is completely different from just being shy or a bit introverted. Shyness is, feeling a little nervous, but ultimately pushing through it. Social anxiety, that's a hijacked system. It means being absolutely terrified of being seen. The brain literally treats a normal social interaction like a physical threat. It floods the body with fear to the point where escape feels like the absolute only option to avoid perceived humiliation.
Moving on to PTSD. The reality here is heartbreaking. You're living in the aftermath, but your mind just keeps dragging you back to the absolute worst moment. It acts as a fundamentally broken alarm, where the nervous system just flat out refuses to calm down after a trauma. In flashbacks, they are not just bad memories. They are vivid, physical re-experiences of the trauma itself. A totally random sound or smell can instantly transport the person right back, causing this constant state of hypervigilance and a completely shattered sense of safety. You might be physically safe, but your brain is screaming that you're not.
All right, Section 3, Extremes. Let's talk about mood and focus. We're going to explore exactly how the brain regulates our attention and energy. Now, what's really interesting about ADHD is the stark contrast between the myth and the reality. The myth tells us you simply can't focus on anything, but the reality? You just can't choose what gets your attention. Because the prefrontal cortex develops a bit slower or works differently, there's this really painful, exhausting gap between intention and action. It is definitely not laziness, it's literally a lack of the dopamine required to make follow-through actually feel rewarding.
And when we break down bipolar disorder, we see two absolute extremes. On one side, we have mania. This is characterized by almost superhuman energy, racing thoughts, and often really reckless decisions. But then, on the exact opposite side, comes the crash of depression, where all that energy just drains completely, and you can barely get out of bed.
You or someone you know might have witnessed this really drastic shift, and this brilliantly illustrates the exhausting unpredictability of the whole thing. These extreme chemistry swings happen entirely without the person's permission, just constantly throwing their life into total chaos.
Let's look at borderline personality disorder next. For people suffering from this, emotions that most others experience as small waves, well, they hit them like massive tsunamis. This is because the brain really struggles to regulate feelings, which puts the person in a state of constant emotional emergency. Imagine a deep fear of abandonment combined with really intense black and white thinking. It means that something as simple as a canceled plan doesn't just feel like a bummer, it feels like an absolute life or death crisis.
Okay, moving right along. Section 4, the illusion of control.
We're shifting gears a bit here to look at disorders that might look like extreme neatness on the outside, but are actually desperate attempts to manage some serious internal chaos. Let's thoroughly deconstruct that whole "oh, I'm so OCD" joke. The myth is simple. I just like things neat and organized. But the reality? It's sheer, exhausting torture. It's being an absolute prisoner to unwanted, terrifying, intrusive thoughts. Those are the obsessions. And the rituals, the compulsions, they're just desperate actions taken to find, like, a few brief seconds of relief before the anxiety demands they do the whole shebang all over again.
Eating disorders are just a terrifying trap. They're heavily disguised in the sufferer's own mind as logic and willpower. Anorexia seeks control through really dangerous restriction, while bulimia relies on this chaotic cycle of purging. So the absolute crucial point for us to grasp is that eating disorders aren't actually about food or weight at all. Not really. They're a dangerous quest for control and perfectionism, basically hiding deep mental pain behind severe physical damage, when the world just feels far too big and overwhelming.
Which brings us to Section 5, when reality fractures.
Now we're addressing some of the most highly stigmatized conditions out there. I really want you to prepare to view the reality of schizophrenia strictly through the lens of malfunctioning brain mechanics. Essentially, think of it as a massive dopamine misfire. We have positive symptoms, which means things are added to reality, like terrifying hallucinations and delusions. Then we have the negative symptoms, things subtracted, like flattened emotions and just completely disappearing motivation. And hey, despite what horror movies try to show us, sufferers are incredibly confused and are way more likely to be terrified victims of their own false perceptions than they are to ever be threats to anyone else. Finally, let's look at dissociative identity disorder, or DID. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the sheer, unbelievable resilience of the human brain. Forget the Hollywood tropes. This is not some movie monster. It's a profound, deeply ingrained survival response. You see, when a child faces trauma so severe that their mind literally cannot process it, their identity actually fragments to protect them. It's the tragic shattering of a single mind under unbearable pressure, creating all this incredible internal chaos just to ensure survival.
All right, our final section, Section 6, empathy over judgment.
Wow, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, right? We've pulled back the curtain on everything from depression to schizophrenia, replacing those tired old myths with actual biological realities. So now that you've seen the literal physical mechanics of these conditions, will you view these hidden battles with judgment or with deep empathy for the mind's incredibly fragile chemistry? Remember, these aren't character flaws, they are very real physical struggles. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and above all, keep being empathetic.